What is an economic conservative? It certainly isn't what the Republican Party has been touting itself as. No, they say we're the party of fiscal responsibility. No, you're not. Bullshit. You want to look at the last administration, or almost every administration since like way back in like the 30s, okay? There has not been an economic conservative president in a very, very long time. Not in my lifetime, at least. And why is that? Well, because a lot of so-called economic conservatives or Republicans, not conservative at all, because they're big government. They love giving out subsidies to big business, to oil companies, all that, okay? They love giving out subsidies, and they love giving tax breaks and creating gigantic deficits, as evidenced by the Bush tax cuts and the unfunded wars in the Middle East. Now, if you come back and you're watching this video and you come back with, well, President Obama has a $16 trillion debt, you're a fucking moron, all right? You obviously have no idea where a lot of that debt comes from, okay? A lot of that debt is putting in the Bush tax cuts, which, by the way, Obama extended to 97% of those tax cuts are still in effect today. President Obama extended pretty much all of them, even for some of the wealthiest Americans. So let's get that straight, okay? Bush tax cuts, those cost tons of money, trillions of dollars gone, okay? And it only helped the very, very few at the top. And you also had those two unfunded wars in Iraq and Afghanistan that he also added to the books. That's not Obama's fault. Yes, he did continue those wars. And yes, we trash him all the time for doing so. But if you think that $16 trillion is all Obama, you're a fucking moron. All right, continuing. So Republicans today are not at all fiscally conservative. They're just not. They're in favor of corporatism and crony capitalism. As I said, giving money to big businesses and cutting taxes on corporations while not embracing actually fiscally conservative ideas. So what's a fiscally conservative idea? You have the earned income tax credit. That is a conservative idea. Rewarding someone with a tax credit at the end of the year for the more hours that they worked. If you're low income, the more hours you work, the more you get rewarded at the end of the year. That is a conservative idea, rewarding work. What do a lot of Republicans say now? Get rid of it. Get rid of the earned income tax credit. It's a waste of money. We got to give ExxonMobil another fucking tax cut. That's not conservative. The Republican Party is not conservative. They're corporatist. And look, a lot of the Democratic Party also are corporatists. So, but they're not expected to be, and they don't claim to be, fiscally conservative. All right. So as far as Americans go, I don't think Americans are fiscally conservative either. Because when you break it down on some of the most important issues in America, facing the economy today, Americans identify more with Bernie Sanders and identify with more what would be considered as economic liberalism. So let's go down those point by point. As far as the minimum wage, okay, minimum wage, which is considered a far left fringe sort of whatever, especially $15. Let's get some of the polling here from the Hart Research Associates. And this was conducted in January of this year. Support for a federal minimum wage of $12.50 or above. This is on $12.50, which, by the way, it was much more than the $10.10 Obama originally proposed. Now he moved it up to $12. This is $12.50. 75% of Americans support raising the federal minimum wage to $12.50 by 2020. 92% of Democrats, 73% of independents, and even 53% of Republicans, over half of Republicans say $12.50. Let's do it. Let's raise the minimum wage. And in places like Arkansas, you saw them pass by a referendum, by a ballot initiative. Let's raise the minimum wage, they said. And they did. More people on the minimum wage. 63% of Americans support an even greater minimum wage increase. That crazy far leftist idea of $15 by 2020, 63% of Americans, over half, almost two-thirds of Americans support raising the minimum wage to this far leftist ideal of $15 by 2020. Isn't that amazing? Now, what about the tip minimum wage? 71% of Americans favor raising the tipped workers' minimum wage to a greater federal minimum wage increase to $15 an hour by 2020. And what about automatically adjusting this? Well, Americans overwhelmingly support that too. 82% say yes, let's have automatic annual adjustments to the minimum wage. So let's keep the minimum wage increasing as the economy increases. These are not far leftist ideas, but these are liberal ideas. But most Americans, no, we're economically conservative. Bullshit. What about Social Security? Well, the public policy polling asked voters in 5 House districts and 5 states whether they wanted Social Security expanded or cut. And this is Arizona, California, Massachusetts, and New York, which were the House districts, and the states were Arkansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, North Carolina, and Washington. So you had quite a mix there. A lot of conservative states, and there are some big liberal states like California and New York. On the question of whether or not to cut Social Security, as Republicans, as the so-called fiscal conservatives say that they want to do, respondents answered in the negative by more than 70% in 9 out of 10 instances. And the lone outlier still opposed cuts by 66%. So 70% in 9 out of those 10 places say no cuts whatsoever to Social Security. Do not touch my Social Security, they say. By a huge majority. And what's President Obama doing? What do the Republicans continue to do? Let's cut Social Security. Let's raise the retirement age. Let's cut benefits. Let's not raise the income cap on Social Security payments and let the fund run dry. Economically conservative? No, not at all. What about taxes and the rich? Well, according to a recent Associated Press GFK poll, 68% of those questions said wealthy households don't pay enough in federal income taxes. They just don't. On capital gains, what about capital gains? For households making half of $1 million, $500,000 starting, right? 56% of people, of the Americans, public, said that they support raising taxes on capital gains. The death tax, the estate tax didn't fare as well, which I disagree with, but I think that's because a lot of people don't understand that and don't understand just who it benefits. Healthcare. Now, this was a poll done by the Progressive Change Institute in January of 2015 on the subject of single-payer healthcare, Medicare for all. Bernie Sanders runs on this. When asked, should you enact a national health plan in which all Americans would get their insurance through an expanded universal form of Medicare, 51% supported, 36% opposed, and 12% are neutral. Breakdown by party, 79% of Democrats, 23% of Republicans, and 45% of independents. But the numbers change a little bit when you have a Medicare buy-in for all, right? Give Americans the choice of buying health insurance through Medicare or private insurance, which is like your single-payer option, essentially, which would provide competition for insurance companies and more options for consumers. I think when you add in that, people are like, oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely, more competition. That's what we want. It's American, right? It's conservative. 71% support, 13% oppose, 14% neutral, and by party, 77% of Democrats say, yes, let's do a buy-in. 63% of Republicans are on board, either Medicare or through a private insurance company, your choice. And 71% of independents. This is not a conservative idea. Universal health care coverage is a liberal idea. Now, it has been floated by several conservatives before, by real conservatives, not these fake Republican conservatives. But on a lot of issues, Americans tend to favor liberal policies and policies floated by more liberal members. So think about that when you start to think and you read polling data that suggests that Americans are conservative on economic issues. No, Americans are actually pretty liberal, pretty progressive on even economic issues as well as social issues. America is a liberal, is a progressive society, and we should be proud of that.